Welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Pacino, and I am extremely excited to have the one and only Candice Cooper on with us today. Candice, how are you doing, my friend?
I am so good, John. How are you?
I'm having a very stressful but wonderful day, culminated by this very first video podcast of mine, and just having a hell of a day.
I fucking love it. Let's roll.
Could you give the listeners a quick introduction to who you are?
Oh God, I should have thought about this before. Okay, who am I? I would sum it up in I'm an entrepreneur. So I have a background in the arts, in cosmetology, in acting and modeling. So I've really been like honing the skills the last, I'm not telling you my age, but a long time. So yeah, I think it really all culminates in entrepreneurship
That's
in
cool.
the artistic realm.
hmm
Yeah.
Um, this is something that you've been doing for a while. We met each other, I want to say, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. It was a fair bit of time ago. You were living, working in New Jersey, and now you are no longer. Tell me a little bit about your path to entrepreneurship and to living cross country and sort of all that has brought you to where we are today.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up, we both grew up right outside of Manhattan, right? So I had an uncle who was a hairstylist in Manhattan, and he would always take me to the city to hang out. And, when I was little, so I knew that I lived very close to the greatest city in the entire world. And I basically strong armed my mom and bullied her until she let me try acting. And she told me I had one audition to prove to her that I could do it. It was a Macy's commercial in 1991. And
Wow.
it was my first ever audition. I actually didn't even know how to read very well. And they had sides, and I kind of like panicked. But I ended up booking it. And my
Wow.
mom was like really surprised because this was kind of like her bargaining chip. She's like, if you don't book this, I don't ever want to hear about acting ever again. And I was
Fair.
like, okay. I was like, okay. So after that, um, I ended up kind of applying to Ford models 3 times, 3 years.
And this is
Submitted
like
my
as
headshots.
as a kid.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my mom told me that I was never allowed to act again because the lady who was my agent for the Macy's commercial ended up stealing like a lot of her clients' money. And my mom was like, I will never let you model or act ever again. She's like, if Ford signs you, she was like, I will let you do it because it's like a reputable company, right?
Sure.
So, third year, she was like, this is it. We're like not doing this anymore. This is like the last time we're sending in your headshots. Well, it was my lucky year because Ford signed me, and I basically worked from like 9 until about 15,
Wow.
6 days a week.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yes.
I did not know
Mm.
this.
Yes, yes, yes. So she was not very happy with me because my mom had to drive me all over Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, like wherever the casting was. And my mom did not like New York City. But
Yeah.
I was like so successful that I was able to, like help the family out and stuff like that. So,
That's amazing. I mean, I have noticed this week you've been sharing quite a few like throwback
stories.
Thursday, yeah, little kid modeling days, and I was like, oh, wow, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Talk about like taking like a circuitous. I'm bad with that, but roundabout way of like you are now working full time,
Yeah.
doing hair and modeling. I just think that's so funny. Like, did you know at like a young age that this is sort of like what was it about the acting modeling bug that bit you at such a young age?
Okay. Well, I thought I could live in the TV. There were moments when I was like 3 or 4 years old where I was like, if I just get a hammer and break it open, like I could get Snuggly Bear. Remember Snuggles from like the Snuggle? Like I legit was like, people live in the TV. I'm going to be in the TV. So I said to my mom when I was like 2 years old, I said to her, I was like, I want to be in the box. And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "The
For
box." And I like
for
pointed to
for
the
kids
TV.
who are yeah, for kids who are listening, so TVs used to have a box behind them. They didn't used to just go on the wall. They used to
No.
have quite a substantial amount of space behind them where all
Yeah.
the television components were, which is fucking
Like it
hilarious.
was a box. It was a box. I was like, I want to get in there. I want to live in there. So, yeah. So it was just like always in my mind. And then I just kind of like, I was a smart kid, so I put two and two together. I knew my uncle like worked in the city. I knew a lot of his clients were like either on TV or, whatever. He would take me with him sometimes to go to their house and like do their hair and I would play with their kids. So I knew that I was close to opportunity at a
Sure.
very young age. Yeah.
hmm That's pretty cool. Um, so 9 to 15, that's a pretty formidable amount of years in one's life. And I imagine that being a child, actor, model, all of those things are not like the best grow up environment for a kid. How did you deal with like the pressures of like going through getting rejected, winning jobs? Like how did that like sort of inform your childhood and then, maybe on into your adult life?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And basically, because my mother was not into me being a model, there was never like this pressure for me to perform and book it. Like, I think she would have preferred me to have failed so she didn't have to drive me all over New York City, right? So there wasn't this like the only pressure that I felt was from myself to succeed. And back in like the early 90s, it was not popular to be a brunette. And I remember going in and trying to get signed because I wanted to do commercials. So Ford had signed me for print work. And then the next step was to be signed for commercial, like a commercial agent. And
hmm
I remember them saying to my mom, she's just too ethnic looking. She's never going to work. Right. So she's just too ethnic looking. Now, my sister has blonde hair. And so they literally said to my mother, if you let us sign the blonde one, we will like pity sign the brunette.
Oh my God.
Now, now I had all this pressure as like at that time I was probably like 10, and I wasn't good at like public reading. Like, oh my goodness, it was
You're a kid.
the most intense thing ever. My mom would be like, "Read it with feeling, read it with feeling." So I was just like, I was like, "Okay, okay, I'll read it with feeling." Um, and now I'm a good public speaker, but it was a lot of rejection, and I also had like a really tough time in school because it was a very like tight knit small town community. So to have that like one kid. There was another girl who acted as well, but I was busier. So to have that one kid leave, it was very hard for me to like fit in school as well. And then when you go to the city, you have adults rejecting you, and then you can't really be friends with the other little kids because they are your competition. So you, as a child actor, really are like on an island of your own. I've had moms cross my name out on the sign in sheet. I've had a little girl insulted a like fashion brand. We were on a go see, and she was like, I hate these clothes. They're ugly. And they were like, what's your name? And she was like, Candice. And she said she was me. And I got like ripped by my modeling agency. Ford called me. They were like screaming at my mom, like, how could you? And then I was like, combine our pictures. I was like, compare our pictures. And they were like, it wasn't Candace. It was this other little girl who did look a lot like me, but it was very shisty for a 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year old. So it
Which
was
aren't
very cutthroat. And then
yeah.
like I had heard like I started to go through puberty and I heard some of the stylists be like, "Oh my God, we have to like cut the back. She's so fat." And like just like, horrible, horrible things to say to a
My
child.
goodness. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially such like formidable years of a young girl to be told like inadequacies, dealing with all that drama and stuff. I'm a pretty well adjusted male in his 30s who's spent a lot of time the last 2 years going to therapy. Did you share a similar path at all?
Well, the reason why I stopped when I was 15 was because I had like a nervous breakdown. It
Oh.
was so bad in school. Like I did a Tampax ad in YM magazine. It was like in all the magazines, and it said, "Last night I lost a ton of padding," and the girls photocopied it in the library, and they put "yeah" from my bra. They like came into the classroom, handed it to me, and they put tampons on my locker and squirted them with ketchup. So it was like I felt like I was like hunted in school, because I was
Isn't
on
that
the
like,
cover of all their toy boxes at Christmas, and they had to sit in class, and I got to go like
so
work,
it's jealousy? Because I mean, that sounds like you would think it would be so much fun and what unique and cool experiences, but when you couple it with like that level of traumatic shit going on the other side of it, that's not ideal.
It was really difficult. It was really difficult because I had a tough home life and work was really my solace. But again, it was like a shark infested water at work. And then it was shark infested water at home and then shark infested water at school. So I felt like the fact that I even like made it out alive without like an eating disorder or some sort of like, you know, issue or drug addiction or whatever, like I'm lucky.
Yeah. I
Definitely
mean, kudos to you. That takes a sort of level of mental fortitude that I'm sure not many people who went through that child, I'm going to use fame in air quotes, but like, working in the public eye at a young age, a lot of those people don't adjust very well in their adulthood,
I
which you've done a good job of doing. So
thank you.
congrats. I'm super curious. So like you go through high school, it's chaotic. You're working, you're going through normal childhood stuff. Did you go to college? Like, how did you get into doing hair full time? Was that something that you went to like school for? And then, obviously the modeling stuff picks back up again later in life. What was that sort of like, in your early 20s?
Well, I am a third generation hairstylist. My grandma, shout out Shirley, she's 86. She is still working. That bitch
Oh,
will
wow.
never hang up her scissors. So I actually tried not to be a hairstylist. And I had a teacher, an English teacher, right as I was about to graduate. I will not shout her out. I'm not shouting out my English teacher, but she pulled me into the room and she said, "Look, you're really smart. Don't just be another stupid New Jersey hairstylist." And that was literally as I was about to go to hair school.
Wow.
And I was also dating a guy who was a bit older than me, and he and his family really just were like, "Ugh, you're such a loser. You're an actor. Like, if you were my daughter, I would make you go to college, right?" So, and I really wasn't living with parents. I was staying at my grandparents' house because I didn't have like a stable home life. So, my grandma could really only give me as much advice as she could give me, which was become a hairstylist. So, but I did love hair because I was exposed to the greatest makeup artists, hairstylists, stylists, photographers. Like I've worked with really amazing, talented people. So for me to go into hair, coming from hair, doing all my friends' hair in high school, it was not like a stretch for me to become a hairstylist. Now, I did cave to the pressures of people around me and I quit hair school. And
Hmm.
I went to Dover Business College, Route 4, and I graduated with honors from a computer information specialist program, which basically is a fancy name for a secretary, which was
Yeah.
like in 2002, like that was really all I had the option of being was like a secretary, or a hairstylist or you know what I mean? Like nothing it's not that long ago, but it was that long
It was
ago.
a different
So
world. It was pre-iPhone.
well, also it was pre-iPhone, but you have to understand, like I grew up in a small town where people don't leave. So for me to be the kid to be working in Manhattan was weird enough. Then I meet this guy and I want to try to have a family unit because I didn't come from a family unit. I give up my passions, myself to try to fit in. You cannot deny who you are. Like
Yeah.
we could pretend to fit in for a little while, but at the end of the day, in one way or another, it will always come back to nudge you,
Yeah.
and it's whether you make the decision at 50 or 20 or whatever.
I really like that. I mean, I relate to that tremendously. You know, I went through the entirety of my professional working career doing stuff, chasing money, like basically doing everything that I could to like not figure out the thing that was like important to me, which is now creating art, this podcast, like building a life for myself that is wholly outside of what I had spent the entirety of my adult working life doing.
Right.
And I think that's the norm, right? Like that's like very easy for people to do, like not really focus on the things that they would like to do for a career, but what's the easy thing to do? And the easy thing might not be easy. Being a doctor, being a lawyer, being a teacher, none of those things are easy, right? But inherently, it is the easier path than like taking time to look inward and figuring out what you want to do with your life. Like I think I got
Well,
lucky in that
it's a
regard.
safe path.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
Path of
feel like
least resistance.
it's the reason it's why people follow religion because it gives you a template or astrology or tarot. It gives you a template to say, okay, the responsibility is not so much on me. So if I mess up, then I just followed so I think people like to give their power away because they think that someone else is smarter than them
Hmm,
and
that's very interesting.
they're afraid. They're afraid to go out on a limb. I think people like to blend in. Like people don't really like to stand out because what if you're wrong?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I feel that. Like, you know, I've been very loud about like the path that led me here. I've been very transparent about what I'm doing with my career now, and there's for sure the possibility that I could fail, but like the manner in which I view failure now is not the same as it was 2+ years ago, right? It's okay to fail
Right.
now. 2 years ago, it wasn't okay. I hid the fact that I lost my job during the pandemic. I just, I shunned any sort of negative light on the fact that John Pachuto, could have failed in any capacity in life. And I think that's the safe route for a lot of people. But it's not something that I'm afraid to do anymore. Like I'm very transparent about my life. I think you gain some comfortability in your own skin as you get older. Certainly for me, when I hit 34, 2 years ago, there was just something about the place of the world where I was in and how I fit into it that allowed myself to open up and be able to like expose what I wanted, right? And what I thought of myself and all these things. And it's been a huge blessing, but like it's not that easy. And I can't even imagine, someone like you who's going through those things at multiple levels with family, with relationships, with jobs, with work. Like it's just an ever compounding factor of all of that.
Yeah, I had a lot of eczema covering my entire body, and
Like stress
I lost
eczema.
my ovary. Yeah, well, I was born with eczema, but I had like a very severe outbreak during those years because my poor body was just like didn't know what to do because there was no safe space, you know.
Mm. That's
Um,
very interesting. I'm curious, from being 15 and being told you're like too fat for whatever you're wearing to having extreme comfort in your own skin now as an OnlyFans model, actor, I don't know what to call it, OnlyFans
I would say
person,
model.
model, OnlyFans model. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because you can have an OnlyFans and be a chef, but I just, OnlyFans model. I
Yes.
like that. Um, Talk to me about that journey because like having probably a significant amount of self-consciousness about yourself and your body to then make a living with said body, that probably shows a bit of growth as a female.
Well, it's a great story. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I was ripped apart for being curvaceous all throughout the 90s in in the modeling world. And they categorized me in the beauty division because that really shot from here up. And I did a lot of book covers and stuff like that. So they were like, you're never going to be a supermodel, but we're going to find a place for you. But
Hmm.
then, as I got older, I had only retired from acting when I had that little nervous breakdown for a few years. And then 18, I was like, graduated from Dover Business College, left the job like midday, went to Starbucks, had a nervous breakdown in my car. I was like, I need to be not in an office with no window. So I had this boyfriend, Rocco. Shout out Rocco. His mom was an art teacher at that really famous Philly School of Arts. And so we were living in Brooklyn. I had moved to LA, was acting there, didn't really, I did very well, but I didn't like living in LA. I came back, I went to Brooklyn. I met Rocco, and Rocco's mom was like, you should be a figure model. And this is when I really, like, there are a few times in my life that I learned, like, everything is relative. And
Hmm.
then this was like, everything is relative. So I talked my way into the School of Visual Arts college. They had auditions for nude models. She was like, you should be a figure model, Rocco's mom. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, you're naked in front of like art students. I was like, that is wild. I was like, okay, maybe I could do this. I was like, maybe I could do this. So the auditions were over, but I had caught it like just by like a week or two. And I called the office and I was like, please, I could come in today. So I went in. The guy was super nice. Um, and he was like, okay, yeah, you're great. Like, let's do it. Like, I'll sign you up. It's very corporate, right? So deadlines,
Yeah.
schedules. It's not like a free for all art, whatever.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was even able to get in that semester was a big deal. So I go to model at the School of Visual Arts and I do the nude modeling, and people are going nuts for my body. And I was like,
So are they
what?
painting you, photographing you? What's going on here?
Painting,
All of the above.
drawing. Yes. So I did like a lot of the fine art painting classes. Just, I worked there for years. So, oh my God, wow. You mean my curvy body, my short legs? Like you guys like that? So that gave me so much like
Confidence.
perspective on my audience and the demographic that I wanted to connect with. It
Hmm.
wasn't going to be like I had grown up watching like on MTV and VH1 on Saturdays they would have like the runway shows, and I thought all I wanted to be when I was little was like a runway model. Like I just thought that that was like the most gorgeous, glamorous, coolest thing ever, right? But my agent brought me into the office, stood me next to Desiree, who was 6 feet tall and did runway, and she goes, "This is never going to be you." And I was like, ugh. That was when we had the talk about putting me in the beauty division because beauty didn't matter about height or anything like that.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, high fashion did. So I learned a lot about perspective and like my demographic and who I was appealing to and why always struggle upstream when you can float downstream. Like that was my demographic, the fine art students. Not a bad demographic to have, right? So
Not at all.
I worked doing that for years and loved it, but it's a very hard job because you have to hold a position for hours. You get breaks
Hmm.
in between, but so how I came to be an OnlyFans model, is that what you want to know?
Yeah, well, it was like, how the question was, how have you like gained the confidence and
Confidence.
comfortability in your own skin, going from having like that traumatic experience in your early teens with your body and body image issues to then, well, you answered the question, putting your body on
Well,
display for other people.
I didn't really have the body image issues. Other people had them for me. Like
Oh,
other
okay.
people had an opinion about my body, but I never felt bad about my body. Like
That's
I felt
amazing.
bummed out that I didn't fit into what I wanted to, which was like runway modeling. But if I was a runway model, I probably wouldn't have been an actor. So
Mm.
like And when I was little, if I didn't get a job, I am very philosophical. Even as a little kid, I just remember saying to myself, it wasn't the job that was meant for me. Like, I'll get another one. And I did. And I booked a bigger one than the one that I lost, you know? So it was like, I've always been a person, even a child, who had just like perspective on life, you know? Like, I get it, I get the flow. So, that was how I really kind of found my audience. Not so much acceptance with myself, but like my audience and who appreciated what I brought to the table. Because I'm not that I cannot diet. Like I
Hmm.
cannot starve myself. Like I just knew that I couldn't. So I had to pivot and find who was going to accept me for who I am. So it was the
Yeah.
fine art community. So I love them for that.
I mean, that's a beautiful story. Talk about entrepreneurship, like starting. I mean, in OnlyFans model, a hairstylist. These are all self-starters, self-motivated businesses that require a ton of initial startup of networking
Energy.
and energy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it. That's like truly remarkable. How have you feel like I sort of, as a photographer, I take a lot of naked pictures, not of myself, of other people. Um,
You're
and
missing out on a
I,
full market, I'm telling you.
yeah, me and my hairy ass. Um, I, it's funny when before I was a full time photographer, I really thought that like there would be nothing more sexual than taking like naked photos of another human being, whether it was a male or female. It would just be an inherently sexual, tensioned environment. And I quickly realized that it is devoid of everything and anything sexual. It is work, right? I'm there to perform a task and a job and a duty. Um, OnlyFans is not quite that, right? There is a sexual component to it. How is that process sort of unfolded for you? Because you've been incredibly successful at it, and it's not like your typical job.
No. Well, how I kind of parlayed into the OnlyFans was I did a photo shoot for me in my place. And
Okay.
this was like back in 2009. I had done a web series, and the directors and producers of the web series wanted me, like, we did my own show. We just shot one episode, and it was me going and making pizza in Brooklyn at a pizzeria in Williamsburg. It used to have the garbage can that said T Hanks with like a picture of Tom Hanks. So if anybody is in Brooklyn and they know that pizza shop, shout out pizza shop. So they wanted me, we did the pizza episode, and then they were like, there's this website, Me and My Place. We want you to do a photo shoot for it, and we want to film you doing the photo shoot. So
Okay.
I emailed the photographer, and at the time he was doing it anonymously. And he said, look, I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to put my face out there, but I would love to shoot you for Me and My Place. So through Me and My Place, I had a very tiny, tiny picture in Esquire. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Um, which then parlayed into more photo shoots with Me and My Place. And then he had started an app. And this was like 2013, maybe
Hmm.
14. And I was like, what? What? I was like, he's like, yeah, I think you'd be great. And I really had to take a step back and think, like, is this how I want to make a living? And then I had to think yes or no, but then I also had to say, okay, well, what are my boundaries?
Hmm.
Because the more boundaries you have, quite honestly, the less money you make, you know?
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
yes. Now, also, I'm a businesswoman, so I understand longevity. So if you give
Hmm.
it all away immediately, then like what is there to build up to? Like everyone likes
Hmm.
to edge it out a little bit in life, like get a little turned on, okay, pull it back. Like that's how you build a stable relationship is like you give each other a little bit and then you pull back, you think about each other, like the juices get flowing and then, a little bit more. So I really had to think like, wow, okay, and what are the consequences? It's very tough when it comes to relationships. Um, so I did the app, the Find Row app for a long time. And for me, coming from an actual real modeling background and a fine art modeling background, I knew that the way that I was going to portray myself wasn't going to make me the most money, but it was going to give me the most authentic connection to my viewers.
Mm.
And it was going to give me a long career because it would be something that I would be able to maintain. Like, I don't do anything vulgar. And shout out to the girls who do want to do that. I totally understand. Like, that's what you feel comfortable with, but like, that just is not what I feel comfortable with.
Sure. I find that we're sort of rapidly approaching a point where there's a massive destigmatization of things like OnlyFans and sex work to a larger degree. I don't personally consider something like OnlyFans as sex work. I mean, I guess if you were having sex on camera for an OnlyFans, in
Right.
theory, that's sex
Yes.
work. I don't think of a person who's like putting pictures of her feet or boobs or something on an app is sex work, right? Like
I mean, I think it would fall like technically, but I personally don't consider it sex work unless you literally are having sex,
I
like
agree.
on camera.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that's extremely pragmatic of me or progressive of me, but I would agree with that assessment. My question for you is: there is, like you mentioned, with relationships and with family and things like that, there's an obvious stigmatization of this career, right? Of this
Yeah.
job that you do. How do you
Sure.
juggle that?
Fuck them. Like, fuck you.
I
Do you
love
pay
that.
my bills? Do you cook my animal fresh organic beef when he like fuck you. Like, seriously, kick rocks and suck a dick cuz like fuck you.
I
I'm
mean,
very
that's
like that is seriously, and I let me explain something to you. The torture and torment I got as a child for being on toy box covers gave me this attitude today. People
mm,
will always have a problem with how you make your money if you're doing it and you enjoy it and you have free time and you have freedom. People, you could be doing it, you could be selling parachutes. And if that pisses people off because you have freedom, like, do you understand what I'm saying? It's all
yeah,
relative. It's all
yeah,
relative. And if somebody has a problem with how I make my living, that is absolutely not someone I want in my corner. Because
yeah.
I,
Well,
and I'll tell you why, because I have such clear standards and I have lived, I feel like a life that I'm proud of, and I'm a person that I am proud of and proud to be. Who is, who has any right to tell me?
no, I agree. I mean, listen, fundamentally, I agree. And there is this like sensitive, hypersensitivity that
Sensitivity,
is, yeah,
yes.
yeah. See, I couldn't say it either. There is this hypersensitive nature that is going around society nowadays, and it's probably fueled by social media. But it would be very easy to understand why a lot of people don't choose this path. While it can be an incredibly lucrative career, while it can be a fun way to earn a living, there is a stigma that comes with it, and there is a lot of backlash that comes with it as well. That mantra of like "fuck you," you're not buying my groceries, I don't give a shit, I think is great. I mean, it's articulating who you are as a human being, and like you said, going from 15 to being, you know, told you're whatever for tampon boxes and stuff to now, it's understandable that you would have that sort of tough skin to be able to weather. I mean, the dumb shit that I'm sure people say.
Yeah, I feel like I've cultivated a really nice audience. I think everybody really respects me, and I very, very rarely get anything inappropriate. And I've done this for a long time. So,
Yeah,
people, I think, I say if anyone ever says, like, oh, show more, I'm like, you can literally go online and see so much more of somebody else. But that is not why I do this. Marilyn Monroe, she had a woman, she went to look at a house and she the man came out and then the woman came out and said, "Get off my property. I don't want someone like you on my property." The greatest, most beautiful icon of our time, right? So
Wow.
people are going to hate you and shit on you no matter what. And that's why I'm okay being an entrepreneur. That's why
Hmm.
all of these, all of these little parts of my life have come together. Like I've never been in a non-competitive industry,
Yeah.
and like I, I am so thankful for those mean girls in school. I am so thankful for the mean girls in the business. I'm thankful for them because I would not be able to endure what it takes to be an entrepreneur if I hadn't had that training. And I think that that comes down to what's wrong in the world today as a whole is because I think a lot of people thought that they were doing the best thing to give participation awards and all that stuff. But really, what it does is it makes you lack character.
Mm.
And my mom always said to me, no one cares that you're fucking pretty. If anyone gave me a compliment, she'd be like, oh, she's kind of fat though. Like she always, I know. If we passed the husky section when I was 12, she'd be like, oh, that's where we have to shop for you. So
Oh my
I
God.
like shredded. But, I don't think people should verbally abuse their children, but I think that people should kind of like take the kid gloves off a little bit because they're really doing their children a disservice. Like
Hmm.
life, if you want to be successful, life is hard.
Yeah. No, that I agree with. I also think that, so I spend a lot of time in a roundabout way ending up where I am now, right? Like I wrote something today and I hadn't written in years. Like I literally just started writing again for the first time in the last few months. It's been
Very
a real
welcome,
treat.
Gemini. Yes.
Oh, I don't know what that
I'm
means.
sorry, I had to loop it back to astrology, but it's good.
Oh,
It's good.
okay.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, so I've been writing a lot again recently, and when I started initially in my like quote unquote writing career, I like didn't tell anyone that I was doing it. I was very ashamed of it. I was like, oh my God, who do I think I am? Fucking Bukowski, like writing on the internet for all these websites and shit. And I was like, I wasn't embarrassed, but I was like very much not putting it out there. And I wrote like an article that went super viral, and then I started owning it because like people were like, "Oh, this is so cool," and then I very quickly like distanced myself from it. I was like, I shouldn't be this person. I am John making a lot of money. I am John buying nice watches and living life to the excess. That's like who I thought society wanted to me to be, and I didn't spend. It took me a very long time to like re-ask those questions of like, what should I be doing? Um, what I like about what the story that you just told me is that you've had that comfort in your skin forever, right? And that's something that I outwardly would portray, but never inwardly felt. And I think that's a truly wonderful sort of existence because as I've gotten older and I don't really give a fuck about what people think other than, my close friends and family, I've been able to build a life for myself outside of the quote unquote norm. I'm not an OnlyFans model, but I'm doing and pursuing art and doing and pursuing podcasting and writing and doing all these things that no one else that I'm like really friends with is doing, but
Right.
it's what makes me happy. And at the end of the day, if you're not paying my bills, you really don't have an opinion on what I'm doing. And it's nice to be able to feel that way at 15. It's a lot for me a lot easier to have felt that way in my 30s. I think it's just really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It has made me a walking target because people who don't feel comfortable in their skin get very pissed off when they see you comfortable in your skin. So I think for me, I like to operate with compassion
Yeah.
and I really try to, like, I definitely find myself always wanting to build people up around me. You look beautiful. Oh my God, I love your lipstick or, whatever. I really try that it's made me like no at the end of the day I absolutely do not care what anybody thinks about me, but I care what they think about themselves
Yeah. I've
and I want
gotten
them to feel good.
I've gotten surprisingly soft in my old age. Like I just genuinely want people to be happy. Like I am so happy, like all the time. I don't have $1 million in the bank. I don't drive a nice car. I don't have any of those things that I used to ascribe to success and happiness,
Right.
but I am constantly fulfilled. I'll get off this podcast, I'll have a like a soul high, I'll feel good about the
Yes.
conversation, I'll edit it, I'll feel better about it, I'll post it, I'll feel great about it, and then it's on to the next one. Like I've found the things that make sense for me as like John, and that is the most freeing thing on earth. I think it's great. The one thing that I've struggled with is like honestly like how do I frame what is like my success metrics as I've developed this art career, right? Like for me, everything used to be tied to money. Everything used to be tied to status. It's not really about that anymore, right? Like, can I buy groceries? Can I pay my rent? These are the things that are pragmatically things that I think about. But like, that's like the only thing that I've struggled with in my new career. And to be honest, none of that really matters.
Right. Well, you're still kind of like putting a measuring scale on it.
Sure.
When that measuring scale really like I don't have my sister has a big house and three kids and a beautiful car and they're country club members and whatever. None of that appeals to me on a soul level at all. You know,
Mm,
if I were a typical woman, I'd be like, ah, no, I'm so happy for her. If that's her dream, that's not my dream. You know,
yeah.
do I want a home and a family and all of that stuff? Yes, absolutely. But for me, waking up every day and just feeling thankful, because there were times in my life that I woke up and things didn't feel right.
Mm,
And you now know that feeling of it feeling right. So if you ever
yeah.
had to go back to it not feeling right, it would feel exponentially worse because now
What?
you know that freedom.
Yeah. What did you in those instances where things didn't feel right, where things were wrong? What did you do to sort that out? Like what was like your process
I
for
started I started making moves. And let me tell you this.
Mm,
Let me tell you this. I started making moves. Whether the
okay.
moves are
All right,
wrong or
Rocco.
right. Yes. Yes. Hey, I dated Rocket. Let me tell you about the moves. Let me tell you. Whether they're wrong or right, if you just put yourself in motion, you will get to the next right place. Like I've
Mm,
done wild shit before. Like I've done wild shit. And I'll just give you like a quick little example. Let's say you're in a relationship and you're not quite sure, hemming, hawing, whatever, just decide, you know what? Both feet in, I'm going full force, I'm committing to this relationship. Whether or not that relationship is right for you will reveal itself within a week or two
hmm.
or a month very quickly. So that's what I mean about putting yourself in motion. I would just start making decisions. I stopped acting officially when I was 27. And I did not know what my next step was going to be. So, you know what I did? I started putting myself in motion. I applied to FIT to be a fashion merchandiser. I got denied twice, and 6 months in between your letters, and I got denied both times. So, that's a year of my time. Then I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to hair school. So, at 27 years old, I started to look for hair schools to go to. And I ended up Googling most prestigious hair school in Manhattan, and it was a Rojo, the one that I graduated from, the one that I went to, I graduated from. But I just started putting stuff in motion.
Is that like law of attraction?
I feel like it probably is, but at the time, at 27 years old, I think I was just going with my intuition. Like
Hmm.
I knew that if I rested on my laurels, nothing was ever going to happen. But if I
Yeah.
just put myself like out there, I knew something would happen. Just
Hmm.
from the trajectory of my childhood and my life because remember, I got denied from Ford 3 years in a row. They also told me that I was too ethnic to be on TV, and then I ended up having a lovely little career. You know what I mean? So I knew that if I just put something in motion, that it would spark the right thing to happen.
I believe in that. 2.5 year ago, John did not believe in that, but for all intents and purposes, I've manifested the entirety of what has transacted for me in the last 6, 7, 8 months. It took 2 years, right? Like I think
Right.
that's the thing about entrepreneurship. Like it takes time to
So
build
much time.
something.
Yes.
The fallacy of overnight success is exactly that. It is a fallacy. Every overnight success takes years and years and years to make it be a thing. But when I start putting out in the universe that I'm going to achieve certain things, it started happening. It's crazy. It's that law of attraction manifestation sort of thing that if you put it out there and believe it, you can make it become a reality. There was a lot of times in my 20s when I fucking was pushing myself away from writing where I was like, this is dumb. What are you doing? Who do you think you are? Right? Like I should have been leaning into that. I could
Right.
be a published author at this point. I could be doing so many different things with my life had I like listened to myself, right? It's very easy to go against that. But when you start putting out in the universe what you want, it's going to come to you. If you, as long as you believe in yourself, no one else is there to stop you. It's up to you to make what you want out of your life.
It truly is. We are the only ones who limit ourselves.
Truth.
So it's like we feel exposed and we feel vulnerable. Like you, writing is clearly a passion, photography, you're very, very talented, okay?
Thank you.
And but you just thought like, who am I to be happy and create this and whatever,
Hmm.
but it was your path to like reject it and then to come back to it, and
Totally
you'll
believe that.
appreciate it so much more now because like I said before, like you now know that freedom of creation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm an immensely grateful and thankful person as well. I think everything that has happened to get me to this point in life was there for a reason, and I'm
Yeah.
continually thankful. Like, who the fuck knows? I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, or next week, or next month, or next year, but I'm going to just keep doing what I want to do, and it will hopefully keep rewarding me based on the hard work and dedication that I put into the stuff that I love.
Literally one foot in front of the other. It's like
Hmm.
it's like if you were in recovery, it's like 1 hour at a time, like one
Yeah,
day at a time. It really is.
yeah.
It's like if you just keep putting the energy in, eventually something will happen.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think it's like one of the beautiful things about the universe. Like things happen for a reason. People come in and out of your life for a reason. Jobs come in and out of your life for a reason. You can put any sort of cosmic significance on anything you want in your life, but as long as you point yourself in the right direction, you put one foot in front of another, you can be happy, you can be successful. And
Yeah.
I like being a testament to that. I'm who the fuck am I? I'm literally nobody, but I'm an extremely happy, well-adjusted human being. And I think you can be one too. Not you, but you, the
Yeah.
listeners.
You listeners, yes, I agree.
And Candice, I want you to be happy as
You.
well.
Yes, thank you.
Um, Candice, I'm so immensely grateful that somehow the universe brought you back into my life, and I am so immensely appreciative of you coming on the podcast with me today and having this conversation. I have a cheesy line: if you've been on my podcast, you're part of my family. I'm just immensely grateful to have had this conversation, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure. Take care.